Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on how to choose apparel, presented by Stahl's Transfer Express. My name is Andy Curtis. I am the Learning and Development Manager here at Transfer Express, and I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. As I watch the list of attendees continue to grow, I see a bunch of names that I recognize from the last couple weeks. So hello to all of you who have joined before. I appreciate your coming back, and it's nice to see you again. If this is your first time with us, then thank you for joining. Welcome. The way this is going to work, folks, is I am going to talk to you for the next 45 minutes about how to choose apparel. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of fun information. We're going to talk all about apparel. If you've joined me in the past, then you know we've covered this topic in a couple different viewpoints. Today's going to be a little bit different because we're going to be using our apparel line here at Transfer Express as examples. So should be fun, should be really educational for everybody. But the way it works is we are recording the webinar. So if you want to refer back to this, it will be easy to do so by going back to the Transfer Express site and by looking at the recording under our Help and Education section. In the meantime, there is a chat box, and if you joined me before, you know I love to interact with you guys. Please do not hesitate to type in questions into the chat box. I will do my best to answer them. If I don't answer your question, it's not because I'm ignoring you. Sometimes I get off on a tangent on another topic. But I have a helper behind the scenes who is here to assist with answering those questions in the chat box. So if I do not verbally answer you, then my behind the scenes assistant will do so. So please feel free to ask away. Hopefully everybody gets exactly what they want out of this. Hi, see, there's my helper right there. All right, so hopefully everybody gets what they want out of this, hence my encouraging to ask questions and make sure you understand exactly what you want to understand. The world of apparel is a big world. And I've made this joke before in the past. I'll make it now too. It never ceases to amaze me how much the industry has grown. When I started in this industry almost 15 years ago, it was pretty simple. A t-shirt was a t-shirt, a polo shirt was a polo shirt. There wasn't a lot of diversity. And now 15 years later, good Lord, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. Technology continues to improve, and that means the apparel industry continues to improve. And what that means is that we as decorators, we have to continue learning and continue educating ourselves. Otherwise, we can get lost in the shuffle. I'm sure everybody has been there before, and everybody can identify that when you look at a garment and you go, oh my gosh, I don't even know what this is. What type of material is this? What do I do with it? So hopefully we're going to shed some light on all that stuff here over the next 45 to 60 minutes. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about where to buy garments from. We're going to talk about what all those terms mean. That's one of my favorite topics. In addition to talking to all you good folks out there in listening land, I have been training our customer service people here for a long time. And this is always one of my favorite topics to go over with them because it's interesting to see who knows what when they join our team in terms of what all of those different terms mean surrounding garments, apparel, and all that. So we're going to go over that terminology and talk about exactly what it means. We're going to talk about how to choose a color, give you some tips and tricks, and then we're going to talk about giving your customer good, better, and best options and the power of 3. So a lot of fun topics here. And again, we're recording, so don't hesitate to watch the recording of this afterwards and ask questions as we go. So first off, in terms of who you should be shopping with, there are so many choices. There's so many choices out there. And we are going to, in the webinar throughout today, the examples that you're going to see on my slides, the shirts that you're going to see pictured are from our apparel line. We are selling apparel through Transfer Express, and our selection is diverse. The catalog you see on the table there is our catalog, and yes, it's as thick as it looks. So there's a lot of options. There's a lot of people to go to, though. Let's be honest. If you're looking into the wholesale apparel world, there's a lot of different places that you can go to. And there's some things that you want to keep in mind when you're choosing your wholesale apparel company to work with. And we're going to talk about some of those details here. So first of all, you're going to want to buy from a wholesaler. Of course, I'm sure everybody knows that, but just to say it, you're going to want to buy from a wholesaler. Don't buy retail. You're going to get better quality. You're going to get much better pricing. And to buy from a wholesaler, all you need is a resale license. A resale license. Now, we've had webinars on this topic alone, actually. So I would encourage you to go watch some of our past webinars about how to start your t-shirt business. But just to give you a quick snapshot, but getting a reseller's license is actually pretty simple stuff in most states. Obviously, I can't speak for every single one of the 50 states across the country, but using Ohio as an example, being that we're in beautiful Metro Ohio, east of Cleveland, using Ohio as an example, it's very easy to get a reseller's license in Ohio. You go to ohio.org or ohio.gov rather, and it's one of the first options that's right there on the main page. Actually, it's very easy to find. Now, I'm sure some states aren't quite that simple, but the point that I'm making is getting a reseller's license is not the big problem that sometimes people perceive it to be. And you don't want to be caught without that reseller's license, because then you don't necessarily get access to these wholesalers and some of the other benefits that come along with it. Bear in mind that there are a lot of wholesalers out there who cannot and will not sell to you if you do not have a reseller's license. This is something strict, so you do need to get one. That being said, one of the other things to think about when you're choosing your wholesaler who you're going to work with is their warehouses. Where do they ship the shirts from? How many warehouses do they have? If you've never ordered a big box of shirts before, boy howdy, they get heavy. So keep in mind that the cost of shipping, it's a thing, man. So if you're working with a wholesaler who has only a couple warehouses and they have to ship it to you from the other side of the country, that box is pretty heavy, your shipping cost is going to start to climb up there. So the wholesaler you're going to want to work with is going to be somebody who has a lot of locations, who's got a lot of warehouses, and doesn't have to ship those heavy boxes from across the country. Here at Transfer Express, our apparel line, we work with 8 different warehouses, so we can reach just about anybody across the country in a very good amount of time. I actually would go so far as to tell you that a good chunk of the country is 1 or 2 days shipping from our warehouses, all 8 of them. So definitely something to think about. Also, watch free shipping offers. Okay, compare the shirt prices and the shipping costs when you're working with these people, because frequently those places that have the free shipping, their shipping is free because they've added the cost of the shipping to the shirts. So at first, when you're working with a warehouse, you're working with a wholesaler, and you find out they've got free shipping on X amount of shirts, yeah, don't buy into it right off the bat. Start to compare some pricing, and you'll discover that the reason they can offer you that free shipping is because the cost of their shirts has been jacked up just a little bit. So you are paying for that shipping. It's just not labeled that way. So make sure to watch for that. It's nice to work with a company that's upfront about the prices and make sure that everything is very clear to see. All right. So when you're purchasing garments from whatever wholesaler you decide to work with, make sure to look at the fabrics. Okay, that's always going to be the first big thing. That's always going to be the most important thing, because obviously, how are you going to decorate something if you don't know exactly what it's made of? There's so many things out there. Like I said at the very beginning, it's not just t-shirts anymore. There is a lot to our industry. So the first question when you're decorating something, before you actually commit to the purchases, one of the first questions should be to look at the fabric. What is it made of? All of our transfer products at Transfer Express will adhere to cotton, polyester, and cotton poly blends. So those are your 3 safe zones that everything will work on. Now, something to note, if you're new to the industry, you might not be aware that some polyesters are heat sensitive. Okay, there are some polyesters out there. They are usually the specialty types, the special polyesters that have the coatings or the wickings or the different dry mesh, cool mesh. We're going to talk about all those things mean a little bit later, but or even performance wear polyester. There's a lot of high-tech polyester out there that does some really neat things. And again, it's obviously a much different world than it was 10 years ago. But the catch is that high-tech polyester, if you heat press it, if you heat it up too high of a temperature or too long, it will actually warp the polyester. If the polyester has a shiny appearance, it'll turn it matte, or vice versa. or it can leave these big square imprint marks actually on the garment. You definitely don't want that either. So you have to be aware that some of the fabrics that you work with are heat sensitive. So you have to watch for that kind of stuff. And you have to watch for other fabric types such as elastane, spandex, lycra, and nylon. Elastane, spandex, and lycra, for all intents and purposes, really those three are kind of the same thing. Something you're going to discover in the apparel world. If any of you out there are new to the world of apparel, then yeah, this is a truth you're going to learn one way or another. So I may as well tell you. You're going to find a lot of things that are really just the exact same thing with a different name. And I'm sure those of you out there in listening land have had this happen before, so back me up here. You'll come across a lot of garments that are labeled differently or have different names, but you kind of discover it's all the exact same thing. So elastane, spandex, and lycra, they're really the same thing. They're that stretchy fabric that kind of feels like a mix of polyester and nylon. We, of course, have products that will work on those, just special products that do so. So when you have those types of fabrics, you have to be cognizant of it. Nylon is the exact same thing. Nylon, same situation. You have to identify to us when you have nylon. We have products that will work fantastically on it. It's a little bit different than your standard run-of-the-mill cotton, polyester, and cotton poly blends. But that being said, here's the funny thing. There are tons of other fabrics out there. There's tons of other fabrics out there. I have come across, in my time here, I've come across shirts that are made out of recycled coconut shells. We've had tote bags that are made of corn husk and other stuff. It never ceases to amaze me how clever some companies can be. So the other thing that I want to throw out here, and I didn't put it on the slide, but just for the sake of saying it, I want to put it out there that if you ever have a garment that you have to decorate, maybe your customer has specified to you exactly what must be decorated upon. If you have a fabric type and you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, I have no idea what this is, don't hesitate to call us and ask. We've been compiling a database of fabric types for years and which one of our products will work on them. So please don't hesitate to call us up and ask us about a fabric type. And if you happen to have something that is not on our list in our database, we will do our best to research it and give you an answer as to what you can do with it. So don't hesitate to give us a call and ask us those kind of questions. We love it. A good challenge is always a fun thing. But anyway, so first step, always look at the fabric, know what you're dealing with before you go into project full bore. So what do all those things mean? We're going to talk about some of these different definitions. First thing we're going to talk about is moisture wicking. Now, a minute ago, I made that joke that you're going to find a lot of times you're going to come across the same garments that have different terminology, but they all mean the same thing. This is one of those times. There are brand names and brand words like dry fit, sports wick, and cool mesh. And I could probably name off 5 or 6 more, but those are 3 of the ones that you'll see right off the bat. All 3 of these things, they are brand names, they're brand terms, but they all refer to the same concept of moisture wicking. Okay, moisture wicking is the concept that the fabric will pull sweat off of your skin and wick it to the top layer of the fabric. Okay, so it pulls the moisture off your skin, keeping you dry and allowing the sweat to evaporate off of the garment instead of you. So it still keeps you cool. It does exactly what your body intends for sweat to do, which is to cool you down. It still does the same thing, but it keeps you dry in the process. Okay, so that's moisture wicking in a nutshell. And here's the funny thing. A lot of fabrics out there in the world have a natural moisture wicking ability, actually. It's just that these days there's technology that can encourage moisture wicking, that can make fabrics wick more easily. Hence why we see it very popular performance wear. Of course, we've all seen Under Armour before and those different types of performance fabrics that are similar to that. That whole genre, that whole category is the moisture wicking ability. But anyway, these days you'll see moisture wicking in t-shirts and hoodies in addition to your compression wear. Golf shirts, I'm sure we've all seen it. You can get your golf polos with moisture wicking. But here's the big deal. Here's the thing. If I had $1 for every time people call us up and ask us this, I could probably retire. Moisture wicking has no effect on printing. If your garment is labeled as moisture wicking, it doesn't affect the ability for transfers to adhere to it. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to call us up and say, hey, I've got a polyester that's moisture wicking. What's that going to do? Moisture wicking doesn't actually affect the adhesion process, so you don't actually have to worry about that. This is going to be one of those times, and you're going to hear me say this a couple times throughout the webinar. There are some times you have to look beyond the term, okay? There's going to be several pieces of terminology we talk about in the next 10, 15 minutes specifically, and people tend to get hung up on some of these bits of terminology because they don't understand it, and that's okay. But some of these terms are things that don't really mean that much to you as the decorator necessarily. Okay, you as the salesperson, that's another story. But to say something has moisture wicking, that's not something that matters to you as the decorator. Moisture wicking doesn't affect that. So when you're looking at a garment type and it says moisture wicking, we can ignore that and move on. Remember, when we're looking at a garment type, we want to know what the garment is made of. And moisture wicking, that's not an important term for that purpose. All right, and again, you're going to see it typically on polyester. Polyester has really been the fabric that has made leaps and bounds technologically over the last 10, 15 years. So you're going to see it mainly attached to polyester. You can also see it attached to nylon, spandex, and lycra. And again, this is why it's important when you're looking at a fabric type, when you're ready to start considering decorating on something, when you're looking at a fabric type, look beyond the moisture wicking words and look to see what the fabric actually is made of. Okay. In this case, if I have moisture wicking polyester, I'm fine because our transfers work on polyester without a problem, all of our transfers. But if I have moisture wicking lycra, okay, now I have a problem because only specific types of transfers apply to the lycra. So it's not the moisture wicking that's the important thing in this sentence. It's the lycra that's the important thing in this sentence. So that's what moisture wicking means. Let's go ahead and move on to the next term here. So what does that mean? Denier. Now, here's the funny thing. If you're a history buff like I am, then denier is actually not pronounced right. It comes from the French word denier, and all denier is, and this is funny. For those of you out there who don't know this already, you're probably going to go, oh my gosh, really? Denier is actually a unit of measurement that measures the weight of a fiber. Yeah, believe it or not. So the higher the number, the heavier the weight. Okay. For example, a nice lady's blouse could be 7 denier, but an awning, a big thick canvas awning, could be 1,000 denier. The higher the number the denier, the higher the weight of the fiber. Okay, but here's the big secret. Are you ready for this? Denier does not affect the printing method. All right, just like we just talked about with moisture wicking. Moisture wicking it's a great feature, it's a great sales tool, but it doesn't affect the decoration of a garment. Okay. I see Kelly asking a question there. You know what, Kelly? The webinar is being recorded, so you can always refer back to the recording. Kelly just missed a chunk of what I said. So the webinar is being recorded, so you can refer back to the recording to see what you missed. But there you go. There's the big secret. Denier does not affect how you design and apply on a garment. Denier is just referring to the weight of the fabric. Okay, so denier is one of those things that can be a great feature. Like if your customer has told you they want something, they want a very thin polyester, they want something lightweight polyester. Okay, well now you know you need to look for the lower denier of the polyesters that you're looking at. But does it affect how you apply and how you decorate that garment? Not even a little bit. Now, the areas you're typically going to see the word denier used is in things like backpacks, bags, seats, awnings, tents, that kind of stuff. Even umbrellas. I've seen it attached to umbrellas before too. Those are the areas where you're usually going to see the word denier applied to. All right. But regardless of where you see the word denier applied to, the word denier does not affect printing in any way. It's just the weight of the fibers. So in the picture here at the bottom, you'll notice a couple of the products out of our apparel catalog, actually, out of our Transfer Express apparel catalog. You'll see that in the middle, we've got one of those cinch sacks. which you could wear it as a backpack, sure, but it's one of those cinch sacks that the college kids love so much. That's made out of a 200 denier polyester. But then the blue backpack next to it and the nifty stadium seat on the other side of it, those are both 600 denier polyester. So what that means is if you were feeling these with your bare hands, the cinch sack would feel a little thinner, a little lighter weight, to where if you felt the backpack and the stadium seat, the actual fabric itself is going to feel a little bit thicker. It's going to feel a little bit heavier. But again, it doesn't affect application at all. All right, so mesh. I will admit to you, when I first started in this industry, I was so confused by the different terminology in the mesh world here. I never really understood. I couldn't, when somebody would call up and ask about micro mesh or mini mesh or porthole mesh, I was always so just confused. And here's the funny thing. When you hear the terminology for micro mesh, mini mesh, porthole mesh, all these terms mean is the size of the holes of the mesh. So when you hear the term, let's say, micro mesh just means those holes are little itty bitty holes, teeny tiny holes. The term micro mesh does not indicate if it's polyester or nylon or a polynylon blend or anything like that. Micro mesh just means little bitsy holes. So when you're looking at a jersey and you're trying to figure out how to decorate a jersey, when you see the term micro mesh, that term doesn't really matter for the decoration aspect. Okay? The term micro mesh just refers to little itty bitty holes. So then on the other side, you've got porthole mesh, which I'm sure now you can put the pieces together and you can figure it out yourself. Porthole mesh means bigger holes, right? So again, when you're applying on these products and you're decorating, you want to get past these words like mini mesh, micro mesh, porthole mesh. You want to get past that. What type of mesh is it? Is it polyester mesh? Is it nylon mesh? What is it? And what is useful is when you're designing the actual artwork, you do actually want to keep in mind the size of the hole for the sake of the design. Okay, so I take it back. The size of the mesh does matter, but only a little bit. Because if you're working with porthole mesh, let's say the holes on porthole mesh, they're the bigger holes, you don't want to put a very itsy bitsy teeny weeny detailed transfer. Because keep in mind, you've got those holes that are going to poke through. Okay, so you don't want to put really detailed stuff on a porthole mesh. Okay, so just something to keep in mind, right? Now, when you apply onto a porthole mesh or any kind of mesh for that matter, I'd say usually people learn this lesson when they have the porthole stuff, but when you apply on mesh for the first time, you want to make sure you have either a cover sheet handy or that you've got a platen cover on your bottom platen, okay? You're going to want to thread the mesh jersey onto the lower platen. That means opening up the garment and sliding just the top layer of fabric onto the garment, leaving the rest of it draping over the edge. You're going to want to thread the garment, and you're going to want to make sure you either have that bottom platen cover or you put the cover sheet underneath the mesh, because remember, when you press that transfer, the ink needs to go somewhere, and it's going to go through those holes, and it's going to want to stick to something. So if you have a cover sheet down there that you can easily wipe off, or a cover sheet that can be thrown away if you have the disposable cover sheets, that's the way to go. If you have a bottom platen cover, then you can easily wipe off what sticks through the holes. So just something to keep in mind. This is a question that has come up within the last week here at Transfer Express. It's literally come up at least 5 times. At least 5 times with me. I don't know how many other times other people have heard it, but what does Posi-charge mean? What is Posi-charge? Posi-charge is used by the Sport Tech brand, and it's actually a really interesting concept. Posi-charge is very similar to a concept you may have heard, cationic polyester or cationic dye. Honestly, to try and put this in a nutshell, Posi-charge, cationic, all that stuff, what it really is getting at is a scientific process where the dye and the polyester are charged, sort of electrically charged differently, so that the dye and the garment attract to one another more thoroughly. What it basically does is it gives you these really bright colors, these really intensely bright colors that never fade. Okay, so that's what the technology does. So here's the good news. Even though it refers to a special kind of dye process, the Posi-charge and the cationic polyester and all that, it doesn't have any effect on application in terms of it's not going to bleed, it's not going to mess with the colors of your transfer in any shape, form, or fashion. It doesn't have any effect on printing. But something we have discovered is a lot of these Posi-charge cationic polyester, a lot of these polyesters are some of those heat-sensitive polyesters we talked about earlier. And when you apply them at too high of a temperature, you get a big rectangular scorch mark on the shirt. Okay, so when you have these types of fabric, no fear, we have products that will work on them. You just have to be aware that that's the kind of polyester you're working with. Okay, you have to be able to tell us that you have a Posi-charge garment or a cationic polyester garment. These are the types of things that we need to know so we can make sure to give you the proper product. But again, the positive to this side is that these garments are very vividly colored. They're very bright and they stay bright. So it's a fantastic product. It's just not a product to be afraid of. Very easy to apply on. Sublimation. If you've joined me before, then we've had this conversation, you and I. But for those of you who might be new and people who will watch this later who have not joined me before, sublimation is a really fascinating process. Maybe that's because I am a sciencey person. I don't know. But sublimation is a really interesting process where it's basically a dye process that involves taking a white garment and dyeing it a color, dyeing it a certain color. So the three garments that you see in this picture here, these three garments, all garments that have been sublimated. They started off white or sometimes kind of a light grayish, almost white color, right? They started off that color, but then the very surface of those fibers, the very surface of the fabric was dyed using a gaseous dye process where the dye starts as a gas, and then the gas deposits into the shirt, turning solid, skipping the liquid state. That's what sublimation is, in a nutshell. Now, to you, the decorator, sublimation is something you certainly want to test before you print it. Okay? Something you want to test before you print it. Sublimation is known to cause dye migration. This means, for example, if I were to take a white goof-proof transfer and apply it to the red shirt you see on the far left here, the young man wearing the red shirt, if I were to apply a white goof-proof transfer to that shirt, odds are pretty good that within a couple hours or a day, that white's going to be pink because it's going to absorb some of that red dye. So sublimation allows for really cool dye patterns. I mean, you see all three shirts in this picture, they look neat. The gentleman in the polo shirt, that whole green white stripe thing, that's really cool. It looks cool, right? And the lady with the hoodie on, she's got the neat sleeves that are going on there. So sublimation does produce some really cool garments, but you have to have a very specific kind of transfer to go on those certain kinds of garments. Okay, we have a digital product here called Subblock that very easily goes on the sublimation. It looks great, feels great, lightweight product, and it doesn't bleed. So you have to be careful with sublimation. You want to make sure you test it ahead of time. You want to make sure you know if it's going to have bleeding issues. Again, bleeding being the street word for dye migration, which is that process of the dye changing the color of your transfer. So that's what sublimation is. Pique, spelled P-I-Q-U-E. Pique is it's funny because it's actually the name of a weave. Now, this is one of those little things when we started doing research into our big master list of garment types here at Transfer Express for the reference of our employees to help you guys out. We discovered that there are some misconceptions. There is this thought out there that pique is its own special type of fabric. Really, pique is not a special type of fabric. Pique is what happens when you take cotton and you weave it in a certain way. Now, the gentleman in the yellow, he's wearing a pique polo shirt. And from the distance, from the photograph here, it doesn't look any different. But when you look close up, you'll notice the little white waffle weave pattern off to the right-hand side here. That white waffle weave look, that's what pique is. Pique is when you take cotton and you weave it to look like you see there on the right-hand side picture. So it's basically a waffle sort of ribbing effect almost, sort of parallel chords, if you will. The place you see this is polo shirts and golf shirts, okay? Pique is one of those things that's not new. Everyone's probably seen it at some point or another. And the best way to go about handling Pique is to use our goof-proof transfers, okay? So here's the deal. Here's what happens with Pique. When you press transfers on Pique, the transfer wants to sink into all of those nooks and crannies that you see, okay, those raised surfaces. Transfers want to sink into the surfaces that are below the raised surfaces. So goof-proof is one of the best ones to go with because goof-proof is very thick and it still looks good after having been pressed on the Pique. But something else to keep in mind is you don't want to have very tiny, itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny details on a Pique garment. Because remember, those layers of fabric, the Pique, the transfer is going to want to sink into those layers, those holes. So what's going to happen is the teeny tiny details, they're going to get a little distorted and they're going to turn out a little wavy because of sinking into them. And unfortunately, this is physics that can't be stopped. So when you're decorating on Pique, make sure you've got a nice big broad design. Left chests, of course, are fine, but I'm talking not little tiny details. And if you're going to do screen print, make sure to use the goof-proof transfer type. So what we've been talking about here, when you're dealing with something you've never heard of before, when you're sitting there and you've got that look on your face like the little baby in the picture here, what does that even mean? When you're reading descriptions, make sure to concentrate on the fabric type. Okay, get beyond all those sales words. Again, just like we talked about, something like hearing the term moisture wicking, or hearing some of the other terminology we talked about, like denier. Those are words that are used for selling and for marketing, but they don't mean anything to you, the decorator, necessarily. Okay, so get beyond the descriptive words and focus on what is the fabric made of. All right. If worse comes to worse, when you have something that you don't know what to do with, don't hesitate to ask the apparel manufacturer. If you're dealing with somebody responsible, they should be able to tell you exactly what that term means and exactly what to do with it. We have glossaries and blogs at our website, transferexpress.com, and our blogs. And do not hesitate to contact our customer service department, our dealer service reps. As I said, we've been compiling a database of all sorts of exotic fabric types for years. And again, one of my favorite examples that I'll never quite get over was when a customer called us up and told us they had shirts made out of recycled coconut shells. I had never heard of that one before, but we managed it. We figured out what worked on it, and we were able to help that person. It took a little bit of time getting there, but we were able to do it. So if you ever have something you really don't know what to do with, don't hesitate to contact us. We can always help you out one way or another. All right, so let's move on to choosing colors. I have some fun tips here, something to keep in mind. When you get your first order with a school, I think it's safe to say a lot of us are probably trying to drum up business from schools because we know that when you get business from a school, it means the baseball team and the football team and the cheerleaders and the spirit wear and the uniforms and all sorts of stuff. So business with a school is always a good thing, right? Or teams in general. But something you want to keep in mind, the team's logo, the team's design is always set. It's not something you're always going to have any input on, and they've got a color in mind. All right. So remember, when you're dealing with team colors, with team logos and all that good stuff, remember that you can match the ink color when you're doing printing, whether it's a screen print or it's a digital print. You can always match ink colors. What you can't match necessarily is garment colors. If you have a team that has a really exotic, specific shade of purple as their color, as their team color, you might have a hard time finding that specific shade of purple in a shirt. All right. And these days, a lot of teams are responsible. They think about this kind of stuff before they choose their colors, teams and schools and all that. But every now and then you come across that one team that's got that really weird shade of indigo for their color. And that's great. They look different. But you're thinking to yourself, or you realize the hard way, finding shirts that color is probably not going to happen. So when that does go down, remember that it's easier for you to match the color of the ink and use a more neutral color shirt. Remember, ash, white, and black go with everything. So if you have a hard time, if you have one of those exotic colors and you're not sure what to do, you're going to want to make the garment ash, white, or black, and you're going to want to have color matched their special color. All right. And the other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about choosing colors is if they want to stand out. Something that we see happen a lot, actually, when customers come to us and they're ordering transfers for field trips, for schools, safety days, or even daycares. A lot of those areas, they want really brightly colored shirts because those are easier for the attendants to see, obviously. And it's funny, as a kid, you really liked getting those neon green and neon blue shirts. And now as an adult, you realize, oh gosh, that's why they gave those to us, because we stood out like a sore thumb. So you want to go bright. Neon is a great color to go with. But if you have not seen it before, safety green and safety yellow, and I'll even up one and say safety orange as well. These are three colors that are very, very bright and definitely stand out in a crowd. So definitely something to think about. If you're looking for something to stand out, if a school or daycare or something is specifically asking you to do that for them, then those are the terms you're looking for. Safety green, safety yellow, safety orange. They're bright colors. All right, so continuing the theme of choosing colors here. So t-shirts and sweatshirts, regardless of brand, all come in the basic colors. All right, and this is almost 100% completely true, is that just about every brand out there, just about every t-shirt and every sweatshirt out there comes in royal blue, navy blue, red, gold, Kelly green, black, and white. All right. Those are the basic athletic colors. Those are the basic colors that just about everybody has. Okay. So something to keep in mind, every brand, a little bit different. Okay. There might be slight variance on occasion. So if you come across a situation where you decide to get somebody one brand of, let's say, gold shirts, and then somebody joins the team, and this person who joins the team is a little bit of an off size. You go to order that off size and discover, oh gosh, the brand that I was using, they don't have that size. I have to get that gold shirt now in a different brand. You have to be careful because it might not match 100%. Make sure your customer is aware of it. And the other thing to bear in mind here too, if you're dealing with an end user, if you're dealing with your customer and they are super critical, they're super picky about a specific color of shirt, don't rely on the visuals on the website. Okay? Don't rely on the visuals on the website, because remember, they're meant to just give you an idea. If you have somebody who's super picky, then you're going to want to call and get a sample or order one shirt. That's the best way to do it. That way your customer can see it and there's a buy-in and there's not going to be doubt that they don't like the color. All right. So don't hesitate to call in, order one shirt, or ask for samples. That's definitely a good strategy when you're dealing with somebody who's picky about their shirt colors. And here's a little bit of terminology for those of you out there who might not be familiar. When you're choosing colors, you always have the option in terms of the screen print transfers to use Pantone colors. Pantone is a company that is basically, Pantone's in charge of color for the world. You can buy Pantone paint. Pantone does inks. Pantone does plastics and threads and all sorts of stuff. We use Pantone colors here at Transfer Express. So when you have a customer that is a brand and they have a very specific color that they work with, a great example is Coca-Cola. If you do printing for Coca-Cola, they have their Coca-Cola red. You have to use that shade of red. There is a Pantone color for that shade of red, and we can use that Pantone color to match it, or any other Pantone color out there. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as PMS numbers. PMS stands for Pantone Matching System. So if you have a Pantone number or a PMS number, we can certainly match that for you on the printing side of things. Okay. And something to keep in mind, if you are doing a digital transfer, meaning our CAD prints products, keep in mind that the digital products do not use Pantone necessarily. When you're dealing with a digital product, we're using CMYK colors. We can certainly take a Pantone color and convert it to CMYK, but the color can change a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. All right. So When you have that situation where you have a customer that wants to order shirts and you might be new to the whole thing, you might not have done this before, you're not sure what kind of shirts to offer them. The power of three is the idea here, hence Three Stooges, the Holy Trinity, Snap, Crackle, Pop. I had an individual who was looking over my webinar the other day who didn't recognize Snap, Crackle, and Pop. I suddenly feel old. But the whole point of this slide is the next couple slides I'm going to show you is I'm going to demonstrate exactly why the power of three is a fantastic tool. So you don't want to give your customers a whole bunch of choices. Too much choice can be overwhelming and can easily drive people away from you. You want to give people options, but you want to give them controlled options. That's where the power of three comes in. Three is the perfect number of options to offer people. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples here in just a second. All right. So that's what I mean when I say the power of three, giving your customer three choices. So let's show you the first example here. So your customer wants t-shirts. All right. Well, what material? Give them three choices. Let them choose from cotton, 50-50, or polyester. Remember, it's 2015, folks. It's not just plain old cotton t-shirts anymore. When somebody walks into your shop and wants a t-shirt, there are choices. But you don't want to go crazy and give them choices on, well, did you want a cotton or a Posi-charge or a sublimated shirt? Or did you want something with this or that? Or remember, too many options is going to drive people away. So when you're taking an order for somebody, it's intelligent just to keep it down to those three options. Did you want that cotton, 50-50, or polyester? Here's another example of using that power of three concept. You have a customer who's walked into your shop and identified to you that they want black polo shirts. Well, let's give them some options. Start with the more cost-effective example on the far left here. We've got a polo shirt. It's black, and it's $5.50. Then we've got a polo shirt in the middle here. It's a little bit nicer polo shirt. It's maybe it's a different combination of fabrics. Maybe it's got some polyester and some cotton. It's got some wicking in it. It's $10.50. And then on the far right, there we've got our swanky polo shirts. This is the moisture wicking polo shirt, the really nice one for $18 a piece. So your customer has asked you for black polo shirts, and you've shown them three options. Now, in reality, when you break open that catalog, are there more than three options? Oh my gosh, yes. But you don't want to show them all those options because it gets overwhelming. Just show them these three. Something cost-effective, something really swanky, and then one in the middle. All right, here's using that same logic, the power of three, but here's applying it to color. So your customer has identified to you that they want blue hoodies. But gosh, you know what? We're not sure which shade of blue. All right, here's light blue, here's navy blue, and then here's one in the middle. Nice royal blue. If you show somebody that full range of colors, that can get in and of itself confusing. I've actually watched customers get choked up about colors and not know exactly where to move forward from there. And then you see the whole ordering process come to a screeching halt. And you don't want that to happen. So again, keeping it simple, that's the idea. Power of three. Whew! Almost 45 minutes on the nose, folks. Well, I hope everybody has gotten something useful out of this blog or this webinar. I could have gone for another 45 minutes, but we all have places to go and things to do, right? So I hope everybody got something out of this. I hope everybody found this interesting. If you have any questions, or if you're watching this recording later, or if you're thinking about it later and you come up with something and go, gosh, I wish I would have asked that, please don't hesitate to hit us up via email, info@transferexpress.com. Give us a call. Our customer service department can answer a lot of the questions that we went over in this webinar, actually all the questions. And don't hesitate to hit our website, please. Our marketing department does this fantastic job of keeping up with our blog every week. And here's the big secret. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you've joined me before, a lot of the blog topics are what become webinars later. So you can actually be really informed just by reading our blogs. I see your question there, Kimberly. Kimberly's asking, what do you suggest if your customer wants sweatshirts, both hoodie and crew neck t-shirts, and other items? Would you say 3 for each? I certainly would, Kimberly, yes. You don't want to hand your customer that catalog to go through. I guess that's kind of the big point here when we're talking about that power of three. You don't want to hand your customer that big wholesale catalog and say, go crazy, because usually that's what's going to happen is they are going to go crazy. And I speak from experience on this one. I've actually watched somebody's eyes roll around and absolutely lose their mind on it. But as my helpers just pointed out, actually, we do have a blog series on this very topic. So, Kimberly, you're going to want to check our blogs out for sure. They'll be very helpful for you there. Okay, everybody. Thank you for attending. The next webinar is going to be November 12th. And the topic is custom shirts, turning a hobby into a business. We've done topics like this before, guys, but this one's going to be a little bit different. This is going to be taking something from that hobby garage level into a real honest-to-gosh business. This is going to be a really fun topic, so feel free to join me again November 12th at 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and have a fantastic rest of your day.